Hi folks, today I'm going to talk about child abuse cases in Madison County and Huntsville and North Alabama. As a society, we are very protective of our children, and of course that's generally a good thing. But if you're charged with child abuse, or somebody you love is charged with the physical child abuse, you need to know that not only does society, but our judges and prosecutors correctly are very protective of children. But what this means is that for somebody who has been found guilty of committing this crime, they can expect extremely long sentences. So the accusation of child abuse is a very dangerous accusation because of the potential consequences on this. Now, we need to recognize that just because somebody is accused of a crime, particularly this crime, it doesn't mean that they're guilty of the crime. I also want to distinguish in this video that what I'm talking about here today are the physical abuse cases, physical child abuse cases, because there are cases of sexual child abuse, and that's a topic for another video. But let's talk about physical abuse of a child. Now, the Alabama laws regarding this are generally found in what's called Section 2615.3 of the Code of Alabama, and you can Google that later if you want. But what these laws essentially say is that the torture or willful abuse of a child who is under the age of 18 years by a responsible person is, of course, a crime. And there's an aggravated form which involves more injuries and other things. I'm not going to go into that. I'm going to talk about the basics in this particular video. So to prove somebody guilty of this crime, they have to prove that the child suffered some sort of physical abuse or willful abuse or torture, and that the child was under the age of 18, and that the abuse was done by a responsible person, which usually means a parent, a guardian. It can be a babysitter or a caretaker or a grandparent, but somebody who is typically responsible for the care of that child. So in my experience, these kind of cases tend to fall into three broad categories. The first are the really scary cases where they're guilty, they've done it, and the evidence is there to prove that they've done it. In that case, the lawyer is left with trying to negotiate the case to the lowest possible consequences, depending on how severe the injuries are and how ugly the case is, and whether there's a long history or whatever. That can be difficult, but it needs to be done. And as I'll explain in a second, there are things that could be done in mitigation. But the second category, which by the way is kind of close to the first, is situations where a person who would never believe they'd have to be talking to a lawyer like me about being charged with child abuse, a parent, they've simply gone too far. If you've had kids, you understand that, sometimes your kids just act in ways that you might want to lose your temper. And for some people, they don't think about it. It happens in a split second. They grab their kid, they do something, and they're sorry, but the kid's had an injury, and next thing they know, they're facing serious criminal charges. I call these cases where a parent has gone too far, assuming that the parent really has gone too far. So what can be done? Well, what can be done depends on how much the prosecutor is willing to play ball, how serious the injuries are, and what the person is willing to do. In some instances, if assuming it's a parent, if the parent or whoever is willing to go to counseling, the prosecutor, that may go a long way in preventing that person from going to prison. Sometimes it can even prevent an actual conviction. Prosecutors really hate to separate a parent from a child if they recognize that it's a situation, a one-off situation where the parent, they just need lessons in parenting. If there's other problems that were going on, if there was alcohol or drugs or other behavioral issues and those are addressed, that can go a long way to helping solve the situation. The third category involves people who are wrongly accused. And thankfully there are people who are wrongly accused. Now they can be wrongly accused for a variety of reasons. Sometimes the child really has been a victim of child abuse, but the person who is accused is not the person who did the abuse. For example, the child may have been in daycare and gotten injuries from a daycare worker. It may have been somebody else in the family who was taking care of the child who caused the injuries. The injuries may be from something that was not child abuse. So it may not be a child abuse, but it might be a mistaken version. The kid may have fallen or had some injury that had nothing to do with any physical abuse, but it is mistaken for that. Now we see that with some degree of regularity in misdiagnosed medical conditions. There are medical conditions that can imitate child abuse. For example, sometimes children will suffer what is known as a radial fracture. Usually a radial fracture can occur when somebody is twisting a baby's leg and it'll snap it in a radial fashion. Well, that's a horrible crime. But, and so doctors, when they see that, a lot of times they think, oh, child abuse, but it's not always. A kid can trip, they can get their foot caught in something, and they can suffer a radial fracture that has nothing to do with child abuse, but can result in false accusations. Similarly, there's something called brittle bone syndrome. Some children have an illness where their bones are extremely brittle, and the kid's constantly going to the doctor with broken bones. The doctor's going, something's going on here. Somebody's beating this kid. Well, no, the kid has a medical condition, and if the doctor misdiagnoses it, it can result in devastating charges. Another thing that happens sometimes is somebody might have a scar from chicken pox, one of those round marks, and the doctor goes, oh, somebody's burning this kid with cigarettes. So misdiagnosis also can lead to false charges. I can't go into every possibility of false charges in this video. Just be aware that it can happen. And of course, if you're accused of this and you're saying you didn't do anything, your lawyer is going to have to explore those. What I would suggest is that if you or somebody you love is accused of a child abuse case, you need to get with a competent attorney, and you need to do it as quickly as possible, because number one, you want to start doing whatever you need to do as far as either investigating or doing counseling or just getting your lawyer educated and up to speed. You want to do that as quickly as possible. It's too serious to mess around with. Of course, if this is the kind of thing where you'd like to talk to us, our phone number's below. Feel free to call us. I do hope you found this video to be educational and informative. Thanks for watching. If you like this video and you want to see more, subscribe. And again, if you like it, if you'll give us the thumbs up, that's always helpful. Thanks for watching. I'm Attorney Andy Siegel.